Hey man, what's up?
Hey,
How you doing?
good. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. It's Steven Nguyen, um, Asian American.
So, Steven, can you tell me about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was born here, born and raised in California, actually in the Fountain Valley Hospital over here. My parents are straight from Vietnam. I'm 21 years old, and right now I'm just in college. I'm doing some dental hygiene stuff. Yeah.
So, Steven, I heard you mention your parents earlier.
Yeah.
Could you please tell me when and how they arrived to this country?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my parents actually came via green card. My uncle, do you know what fresh off the boat means?
Yes.
Yeah, so my uncle was a fob, so he was able to get a green card, obtain citizenship, and then he was able to give my dad a green card. So that's how we ended up here. Yeah.
So, where did your uncle decide to settle here, and what was life like for him when he arrived?
Good question. Yeah, he stayed in LA, down in near Downey area. I don't really remember. It was like Gardena Downey area, but yeah, he decided to stay there because my grandma was actually already there. She was a what do they call it? Flight attendant, right? Right. Okay. Yeah, she was a flight attendant. So she got to travel across the world, and that's how she was able to come here in America and stay. So we ended up just residing in LA.
Did they immediately find housing to rent or buy?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. I think they decided to stay together. When my uncles came together, there was about four of them, and they ended up buying a property down in Gardena. Yeah, they lived with my grandma at the time, so it was a really packed house. Like I'm talking 7, 8 people in like 1,000 square feet house.
Since you grew up in California, how was your neighborhood like growing up?
Yes, so my parents moved from Gardena down to Garden Grove, and then eventually Santa Ana. The demographic around here is Hispanic Mexican.
And did you get along with non-Asians?
Yeah, we kind of have similar situations, like bilingual problems and such, but we did have our differences, yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that your demographic is mostly Hispanics and Mexicans.
Yeah.
Were there any other Asians besides you when you grew up? And if there were, did you find yourself grouping with them or feeling comfortable around them?
Growing up, I really did feel comfortable with any type of person, but I did have a little group, like a little Vietnamese culture, because I lived right down the street from Little Saigon, Westminster on Bosa. So there was an Asian demographic that was present. So yeah, I got along with them, but I really did get along with the Hispanics more often than not because just the demographic of my city.
So what was the reason that made your uncle decide to emigrate?
Yeah, so this was post-Vietnam War. Money was tight over there in Vietnam, and the Vietnam dollar wasn't as strong as it is now. So my uncle made the choice to move his family there, and he had to take the first step by being, the fresh off the boat, the fob person. So that was the reason.
So after your uncle and the rest of your family acquired the green cards, did they find any difficulties getting a job or surviving down in Gardena?
That's a good question. Yeah. So my parents, my dad specifically, he was actually a newsman. He was on the car throwing routes, throwing newspaper around, and yeah, it was a struggle learning English first of all, and then secondly, just trying to find a job that would hire for people who weren't, very capable, especially with no background coming straight from Vietnam. It was very difficult for them to find a job. Yeah, but they did their stuff, and they also went to school at the same time. Actually, there was a story my dad actually told me that one time he was coming out from school and he was trying to get home and he had to decide either a McDonald's burger or the bus ride home. So that's a story I like to tell a lot.
So you mentioned your dad worked as a newspaperman. Did he experience any racial prejudice from his coworkers or his management, and what were his working conditions like?
Yes, so about the first part, yes and no. The reason why he got that job is because it was mainly Vietnamese based, so he didn't have to deal with the language barrier that much. But when he was throwing the newspaper down the street to the houses, of course he got a little bit of a side eye especially in the more nicer areas where it was predominantly where it was predominantly white people. That's where he really struggled giving off the mail. So yeah, at work, not necessarily, but while working, yes.
So Steven, getting back to you, of what ethnicity are your friends?
I guess you'd call it a variety. Growing up here, there's a lot of Hispanic people, so I got Hispanic friends, I got white friends, of course I got Viet friends, black friends. Yeah, it's just how I am, I guess. I kind of base people off of merit rather than appearance. That's just how I made my friends in high school.
And is there any reason for this?
Well, like I said, I guess I just base people off of merit. You know, if you're funny, you're funny. If you're smart, you're smart. I don't really look too deep into appearance or what I should be friends with and who and such like that.
So did you always have a variety of friends in high school, or what was your friend group like before high school?
I see. Yeah, growing up, I think that's what made me this way. Growing up, I saw a variety of people, especially in elementary school and such. So I made friends with everybody, you know. Like I said, I base people off of merit rather than appearance. So I really saw no reason in sticking to my own group, as you call it. Whoever was fun to hang out with, I guess.
So you mentioned how you said you have a variety of friends, right?
Uh-huh.
Did you have any special feelings or comfort around other Asian Americans?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So like, there's like niches and cliques, I would say, you know, like growing up, especially in high school, middle school, like, you know, the Vietnamese group would hang out together, the Hispanics would kind of group. So when I hung out with the Vietnamese clique, inevitably I would, just for, you know, just to talk and such. Yeah, I felt a little bond. You know, we all spoke the same language, we all understood the same struggle.
So adding on to that, what would you say is your identity as an Asian American then?
Yeah, so I'd say I'm Vietnamese American, but I'm very proudly American. I get along with everybody, at least I like to think. I'm pretty mild-mannered. So if you're a nice guy with a smile on your face, we could be friends, really. That's how I feel, I guess.
So you identify as Vietnamese American, but you identify or lean more towards your American side, correct?
I wouldn't say I lean towards more to my American side, but I am very proudly American. I would say I lean towards more Vietnamese American, especially my upbringing, how I am. I feel like Vietnamese Americans would understand my struggle more than anybody else, but I'm very proudly American, and I feel that being American makes me able to see people by merit and by who they are rather than what they are.
And do you still decide to practice any of your Vietnamese traditions, or do you have more of a mix of both your Vietnamese and American identity?
I see. That's a good one. Yeah, so I go through a lot of, I guess you call it rituals, a lot of practices, Vietnamese practices, you know, prayers and incense and such like that. Yeah, so I do practice a lot of my Vietnamese practices, but they don't affect me. They don't affect the type of person I am. You know, they're just a thing that I am a part of. So I can relate to other people who also are a part of that. But yeah,
And is there an ultimate reason why you still practice these traditions?
I guess, like you said, it's tradition. Me being Vietnamese American, I'm very proud of being so. I want to keep those traditions going.
So you mentioned how these traditions, right, are what you call traditions. So you practice them generations after generations, right? So would you ever considering marrying outside of your Vietnamese American, your Vietnamese American group, I guess?
Yeah, actually, yes, of course. I'm, like I said, I'm very proudly American. That doesn't mean I'm not proud of my heritage. So if I were to marry somebody not of Vietnamese descent, of course I'm going to accept them, but they better get ready to accept me for how I am. Like you said about tradition, I'd probably instill a little bit of that to them, and of course my children, because they would be Vietnamese themselves. So yeah, I would keep a little part of that Vietnamese tradition going on, of course, yeah.
Did you experience any difficulties growing up as an Asian American?
Yeah, of course I have, yeah.
So what were some racist experience you had, and can you also go into depth about one of those racist experiences?
Yeah, sure. So, I dealt with the very common small eyes joke, the butchering of my language, and the terrible accents. Now, for in-depth story, well, you know, having friends in middle school, often you guys are punking each other, having, lighthearted jokes and such. But one joke that always hit a little bit too hard is, I guess I would say the accent. Yeah, that one hit hard, especially me being a person of various types of friends, white, Asian, black, Mexican, all the. Hearing it from them, it was kind of, it didn't feel like a poke fun. It felt really derogative, I guess I would put it. Yeah, especially, I guess I would say, especially from a white person, someone who, I guess, comparatively doesn't have a lot of struggles in America as anybody else with more ethnic background. So it felt extra harsh coming from a white friend of mine. I guess I could bring up the time that, in math class, they'd always ask me for help, even if I didn't know any better. I'm Asian, I should know math, that kind of idea. That one always hurt.
Do you feel there's a certain image or expectation that society puts on Asian men? And how has that affected you personally?
So I guess I'd bring up stereotypes, Every ethnicity has a stereotype, so it's like, I guess that is the image that's portrayed from society, the stereotypes. And yeah, I feel the stereotypes, the bad driver stereotypes and such. How I feel about it, I'd say, some bad, some good, I guess. Bad driving, whatever, and, like good in math, although that's a good thing they're saying, it feels very derogative how they bring it up often.
And do you feel as though these expectations or images affect your masculinity and or self-worth?
Yeah. I guess sometimes, yeah. Masculinity-wise, I guess, me being a male, of course, I sometimes it does feel like I am less masculine than, a Mexican, a white, or a black person, especially if they're taller, stuff like that. We often are seen as the shorter race. Even if it's statistically true, that stereotype does hurt us, So the masculinity part, I guess that's how I'd answer it. Yes, it does affect me.
And adding on to that, how do you feel about Asian Americans and specifically Asian American actors and how they're portrayed in movies, music, and social media today?
I would say I think it's a start. Comparatively speaking, we're seeing a lot of African American and black figures blowing up now, doing various types of roles, whereas I want to say we don't see as much of Asian representation, and when it is, it's always very bordered up. It's like kung fu, or there's no real celebrity that's really showing for us right now, where it's like they can do this and they can do that. It's always still very stereotypical, the roles that we play.
So Steven,
Yeah.
to conclude this interview with the 6-7 minutes we have left in 41 seconds,
Okay.
is there any advice you'd like to give other Asian Americans out there if they've experienced similar, racial prejudice?
Okay. That's a lot of limelight. I guess just be yourself. That's how I lived. I was always just myself. Of course, the stereotypes hurt. But I feel like the goal of a person is to maybe break the stereotype, especially if the stereotype is kind of harmful. Be yourself, break out of that stereotype, and just be as successful as you can. Having traditions, being an ethnic group, Vietnamese, we have backup. We have something to fall back on, and be proud of it. You don't like the stereotypes, break them, But the traditions are always beautiful. I guess that's what I would say.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
so
Thanks
much,
for having
sir.
me.
And is there any other like 67